This is the fourth part of time dependent perturbation theory. In the last lecture actually I made a mistake and I kept referring to this lecture as the third lecture, but as you can see clearly it's the fourth lecture. And what we learned in the last lecture is that this Fermi-Golden rule, and this Fermi-Golden rule had these two types of terms. One is a first order term, another is a second order term, and the rate equation of Fermi-Golden rule. And the second order term had this problem with the denominator has this EI minus EM, such that this I and F cannot be same. So if I look at pictorially, the first order term refers to a transition from I to F where EI is almost equal to EF. The second order terms refers to a transition from again some initial state to some final state, which are almost same in energy, and they are very close, like EI is almost equal to EF, but through a intermediate step which can be any state. And physically thinking, it's one cannot rule out that it can be any arbitrary state, but we have worked out the derivation in a way such that this intermediate state cannot be the EI or EF. If it is, then this particular formula blows up, and that is why we have to do something more, which is the main subject of this lecture. Okay, so here is the method to deal with this. Let me make it full screen. Here is the method to deal with this, and you will see this is your first encounter to the idea of regularization, and it is a very common phenomena in physics and especially in quantum physics, that you will encounter in your formulation of a quantum mechanical system an infinity or a singularity which you have to somehow eliminate, because it doesn't depict a full physical picture, and it's also an example where you should not take your mathematics, you should not let your mathematics guide the whole thing. So here is this trick of regularization, and it is not a unphysical trick, it's not just a mathematical trick, it's a physical way to visualize the problem, more physical way to visualize this problem, but this infinity doesn't actually appear. So the trick is following. So let's first look at where is the problem is coming from. The problem is coming from because if you write down this second order formula for a constant potential which you switched on at a time t equal to 0, and the system was in state I before that, and you want to ask after a certain time what is the probability to find it in state F, which is the whole game of Fermi-Golden rule. And since this B is constant in this sense, because constant in the sense it is switched on and it is a constant immediately, so this is kind of a discontinuous function and it's constant everywhere. So the only thing left to integrate is this object EI omega Fi t, and that integral will give a 1 by omega Fi, which when F and I are equal will blow up. So to fix that we need to add a part in it, which we should have one way to at least fix it. There is no one way to do this kind of thing. That is also important to understand. At least one possible way is to add a part, something into it which doesn't go to 0 when I and F are equal. In order to do that, so and you have to give it a physical meaning also. So the B cannot be constant anymore, it should have another time dependent part which comes here and doesn't let it go to 0 when even if omega Fi is 0. That's the simplest fix of this problem. So that is what will be done here, and this trick was probably because of probably devised by Feynman, most likely. I'm not sure about that statement, that's why I put an uncertainty. So the trick is, instead of switching off the potential suddenly, you slowly turn it on. And that is what almost always happens in reality, because there is nothing called a 100% step function, 100% switch on. But instead we are going to the other limit, because mathematically if I say that the potential is switched on slowly, so Vt is equal to e to the power eta tv, this eta, mathematically this thing goes to exactly the same as our problem when eta tends to 0. But when eta tends to 0, then it's a super slow potential. So you can think physically it is not very close to what you are doing when eta is almost going to 0, but mathematically it is the same thing. it's same as this sudden switch on. So the question we want to ask now that it is slowly switched on, so we can ask this question: in the remote past, and the potential was actually 0 only in the remote past, some t going to minus infinity time, and then we gradually slowly turn on the potential and to its full value, and we want to ask if the system was in a state I in the remote past when the potential was 0, what is the probability that it will be in the state F. So that is the actual problem we will solve, and at the end we will take the eta going to 0 limit, and that will give us the result in the case when this potential is actually just Vt is equal to V suddenly. Okay. So in order to do that, notice this, of course this is something very trivial because the problematic integral was this. When I do this integral, I will get a plus ib, so even if b is 0, a is not 0. So that is the whole trick of this problem. So in the remote past, as I said, the state is in I, and we like to calculate, and this time we are want to calculate this. What is the probability? So earlier we have calculated here what is the probability of I going to F, where I without the intermediate state not being equal to I or F, and in first order level even I is not equal to F but something very close. So now we are going to do that when I is equal to F. We are going to treat with that scenario, or you can call is what is the retained probability or return probability. What is the probability that the state stays there without going to any other state? So that is the question we want to ask. But before we do that, let's do a sanity check, which means let's check that even though because we claim that we are going to work with this particular potential instead of a sudden switch on. Let's look at that if this particular potential at the eta going to 0 limit gives us the formula we already derived. That is the main claim, right? If that works, then only we can go ahead and do other things. Okay, in order to do that, let's try to recover the Fermi-Golden rule. I'll check if we can recover. So we know that if f is not equal to I, this Cf0 will be 0 because it's a delta function, and I and f are clearly not equal to, are not same, because that's how we derived our old previous formulas. The first order correction is this formula, and here instead of this constant v, you have this e to the power eta t. This part is here, and this integral just in the previous page, this integral tells you that it will be Cf1t will be this minus I by h bar BFI matrix element e to the power eta t plus I omega fi t by eta plus I omega fi. So now let's check what happens to that in the eta going to 0 limit, but first work out the probability by squaring it. It's just the square is this, and the transition rate is by taking derivative is this. And if I take the eta going to 0 limit, this is something you had done before. The eta going to 0 limit of this function is this delta function, which is basically this. Physically thinking, it's actually a Lorentzian where omega is the width. So as you shrink the width shorter and shorter, it becomes almost a delta function. So that is why you can convince yourself that is indeed that is what happens. So then I plug in this into this formula, in this omega fi formula, and I get this, which is basically the form of the Fermi-Golden rule. So our mathematical representation of the slow turning on of the potential correctly reproduces the formula we got earlier in the eta going to 0 limit. Now we'll do the thing we actually wanted to do, which is take the scenario when the we want to ask the question, what is the retained probability of the state remains there. So again we know that Ci0 is 1 in first order, which was is delta fi. The Ci1 is, again I plug in the formula here, Bii is the diagonal matrix element because I and I are same in both sides, and this will give me this minus I by h bar eta, just with this one line integral Bii e to the power eta t. Ci2, the second order correction, will give me this similarly, just a little one more step, but it's a standard plug and play of the just well known formula, and it will give me this form. So if I just collect it together, I will get this this particular form of my minus I by h bar square VII square. So this summation has two kind of contribution, because now we want to allow everything, I and m all can be equal. So one is when m is equal to I, another is when m not equal to I. So if I isolate these two part, the m equal to I part is this, these terms, these omegas will all drop to 0, all the imaginary parts, and the m not equal to I will have this full form. Okay. So this, if I combine all of this together, this is my form of the CIT, which has this 0th order correction, first order correction and second order correction, all separately written with the, where this is the contribution coming from this own site, own state, and this is the contribution coming from sum over all other states. Okay. So now if I take the derivative, I will get the transition rate, and then I take the eta going to 0 limit. So when I do that, this term will give me 0, this term will give me an eta in front, that eta will cancel, and then I take the eta going to 0 limit, it will give me just a VII term. In this term I do an expansion where I keep terms only up to order 1. So 1 by eta is a larger term than 1 when eta going to 0, 1 is smaller, and anything above like eta onwards, in the eta going to 0 limit, I neglect them. So if I do that, I get this formula of the rate equation. So now notice in this equation I also can write down the CIT, use the same approximation of same way of taking eta going to 0 and not taking any terms which is even fast order than eta. So I will get this form which is CI. So this is the form of dCi dt is this, and CI is this up to this order of approximation. So now if I put these two things together, I can write a nice compact form in the way which is the reason I want to write it in this form, because in this way of writing I want to write everything in a form where there is no t dependence on the right hand side, because then it will becomes a nice differential equation which can solve very simply, and I can do that by writing it in this form. So Ci dot by Ci is equal to minus I by h bar VII plus I by h bar sum over all the states except the ith state, Vmi square divided by Ei minus Em plus I h bar eta. It has no t dependence on this side up to an order where I neglect all the terms which is eta onwards, ordered eta onwards. So then you know this differential equation is going to be very simple to solve, because it is just dCi dt constant times Ci. You know the answer of this is just exponential solution will work, and you can write the solution in this form, and sorry, exponential with an imaginary term. So the solution must be of this form CIT e to the power minus I delta t by h bar. So this is the answer solution I plug in, where the delta is clearly this this object, and I will estimate the delta in a moment. But let's understand what is the physical meaning of this delta, because in this form CIT is equal to e to the power minus I delta I t by h bar. So this clearly looks like something you can physically interpret, because you note this Ci which acting on t, CIT, must look in this form. That was all written in interaction picture. So if I go to the Schrodinger picture, it will look like this. So this is e to the power minus I delta it, which is this solution of this equation, plus the EIT. So this looks like a correction in the EIT. So you can visualize this as your effective energy, where the energy levels have shifted in within this time dependent perturbation theory, and your new energy level is just now EI plus delta I. And notice we have earlier agreed that instead of writing EI, we write EI0, we will write EI. So EI0 is the unperturbed state, and which we dropped out the 0 for or the not for brevity. So this is basically a shift in the unperturbed energy states which is coming from the perturbation, and up to the first order approximation it is like that, but you can add also these higher order approximation terms. So this delta is like a series. So we basically have the level shift. These are basically the level shift of the time independent perturbation theory. It's similar to the level shifts in the time dependent perturbation theory. So this delta I1 is VII, which we just know this form, this particular term. And as you know from time independent perturbation theory, this is very similar to the formula of time independent perturbation theory. And this second term is basically to do the second term we will use a well known formula from complex analysis, which is basically if I take the epsilon going to 0, this is basically the principal value 1 by x minus I pi delta x. This is the Cauchy principal value theorem, or the Cauchy principal value, it's the Cauchy principal value theorem. So we will use this here to take this to evaluate this term when the eta is almost 0, eta going to 0 limit. So let's take that limit. So this term is basically will have the principal value, which is the real part, plus the imaginary part of delta I to the second order correction. So also notice that this term is nothing but the golden rule, and exactly the form of golden rule. So Wi to m not equal to I is basically the imaginary part of the second order correction. So now let me write down the full solution of CIT. There will be a real part, there is the imaginary part in the eta going to 0 limit. And if I write it down like that, if I take square of that, which is the relevant quantity, because it's the when you square it you get the probability. So the square of this will cancel this real part, so and it will only you will leave with the imaginary part. And this imaginary part can be written in another one more form of shorthand notation for clarity. I write it as e to the power minus gamma I t by h bar. So gamma I by h bar or gamma I is basically minus 2 imaginary delta I. This is just to physically have a clearer answer, clearer picture for this. We'll see that in just in a moment. So this Ci square is now e to the power minus gamma I t by h bar, where gamma is this, just the formula I wrote down. And the gamma I, so now you can think that what the gamma I represent. So it represents that how quickly the weight on Ci is decaying in time, because it's e to the power minus form. So it characterizes basically the rate at which the state I will leak into other state. So you can say it's like a leakage probability, or how it disappears. So again, for sanity check we have to make sure that it leaks, but where does it leak? It leaks to other states in a way such that the total probability is always 1. So for that the Ci square plus all the other Cm square, which is not equal to I, must be equal to 1, and that can be checked very easily, that these two together will give you 1. Okay, because of course if the state whatever is going away from state I will cause the growth of amplitude in the other state, so that must happen because the total is conserved. Okay, so now we will physically interpret this. The first part in this solution, like CIT, the real part, it's the oscillatory part, and there is a decaying part. So the oscillatory part actually is like a energy term, because the energy term comes as e to the power IE by h bar, IET by h bar. So it is basically gives you the correction in your energy, effective correction, just like this correction. But the imaginary part is not like an energy term, it's like a decay term, how rapidly the state leaks away to other state, how rapidly it depletes to other states. So I call the imaginary part decay width. Why I call it width will be clear in just a moment, but it represents some kind of decay, so that much is clear. And also note that in this amplitude, what is the dimension of this? So e to the power minus must be dimensionless, so the gamma I must have a dimension of time by h bar. So in other words, the h bar by gamma I can be called a time scale. It's like a time scale in the problem, and the Ci square can be now written in terms of this time scale, which is e to the power minus t by tau I, we call it a tau I, and it is basically represent the mean lifetime of the state I. So you can, if you calculate the mean, you will get this lifetime from there, and it basically represent how long or the decay rate, inverse decay rate. So it's like a time scale, that's why we call it a mean lifetime. Okay, now coming to the point that why gamma I is called a decay width. So it's because if you take the Fourier decomposition of the transition amplitude, this is the transition, the full transition amplitude, which has a EI, the original EI, which is the EI naught, I am not writing the naught, plus the correction which is coming from the perturbation theory, real part of delta IT, plus the imaginary decay, which is not a energy like term, but it represents a decay of the probability of that state. So if I take the Fourier transform of that, it's basically this Lorentzian function, where this coefficient appears here and this one appears here, and we know that this part of this is a Lorentzian form. If you plot it, it's a Lorentzian, and this term represents the full width half of maximum of the Lorentzian, and that is why it is like a width of the Fourier transform of the spectra. So that is why it is called the width, and it can be also interpreted as a time energy uncertainty, because delta E, since it's like a width, is you can write it in the energy space of this time. It's a time dependent function. When you go to the energy space, it's like a width, and the delta T delta E must be equal to of the order of h bar. That you can check that it is indeed to be the case. Okay, so basically it tells you that this is the uncertainty in the energy with gamma I, and the mean lifetime is delta T, and they are related by the and they satisfy the uncertainty principle. So that is basically the point of this. Okay, so that is what I wanted to say about this part of the Fermi-Golden rule. That completes the discussion on the Fermi-Golden rule for a constant potential which is suddenly turned on at a certain time, with the full picture is given by this form. Now that we have learned all about the constant perturbation, where you switch on a perturbation at time t equal to 0, now we are going to do another type of perturbation called harmonic perturbation. There are actually many different forms of time dependent perturbation, as you can imagine, but these two are most common and are more responsible for many practical applications and technological development. So that's why we are doing these two particular cases. So note that this harmonic perturbation we already did in the exact solution, where you have a sinusoidally or harmonically varying potential, and we have learned that a significant transition takes place when the time dependent perturbation has a frequency which is connected differs the initial and final state by a Bohr condition, which is EF minus EI is equal to NH bar omega. So you will see that in this within this framework of perturbation theory. So let's consider a perturbation which is a potential that is varying sinusoidally or harmonically as e to the power I omega t. It could be sine or cosine, but we are taking it for the convenience of algebra. It is much easier to deal with this exponential form. We will see in a moment why. Even if you, in some cases you have to do this sine or cosine function, it's always better to write it as e to the power I omega t minus e to the power minus I omega t by 2i for the convenience of algebra and all that. So let's start with that anyways. And the first order calculation, the first order correction is again plug and play, just use the formula we know, and this will have this particular term because there is a omega which is the frequency of the potential, and that's like an inverse time scale, so that will appear here, and you will get the form to be like this. And now you can write it a little more conveniently by taking it taking the e to the power an exponential part out, and this becomes a sine omega t by 2 by omega by 2 form. This is actually an easier form to take limits and all that. For the mathematical convenience we choose this form. Okay, now we just did the algebra. Now we will just see that make sure that the whole Hamiltonian is always Hermitian. So the perturbation should appear as a Hermitian form, such that it's an Hermitian operator. Only that then it physically makes sense. So Vt must have a Hermitian conjugate term. So we put this Hermitian conjugate term, and just by the same token we get this form. So instead of a minus, here you have a plus. That's the only change. Okay, so now notice that this formula is similar to the constant perturbation formula, except instead of omega fi you have a omega fi plus minus omega, which is the omega which came from the frequency of the perturbation itself, because the in mathematical form that is how it came, e to the power I omega, and omega plus minus omega, omega fi plus minus omega appeared everywhere. That's the only difference mathematically. So let's see what does it mean physically. Also notice that as t goes to infinity, this CFI is significant only because of these terms, because of this term, as you take the t going to infinity limit. And then this term, if this omega fi plus omega is almost equal to 0, then this term will contribute the maximum. Or if omega fi minus omega is almost equal to 0, then the second term will contribute the maximum, which in terms of energy means the energy difference between initial and final state must be either plus h bar omega or minus h bar omega. And clearly both of these cannot happen at the same time. Either one will contribute, other will not, and that means either it will be the final state will have a energy difference from the initial state, either h bar omega less or h bar omega more. And that is clearly a violation of energy conservation principle, but we know that that is not a very sacred principle in this for these virtual transitions and all that. But here it is not a virtual transition, here is a proper initial to final transition. So we have to understand what does it mean. So this no energy note that this no energy conservation is satisfied by the quantum system alone, rather than the apparent lack of energy conservation. So, and that is basically the energy given or pumped into the system or taken out by the potential itself. So the whole system itself has a varying time varying energy, total energy. So it's not a truly a energy conservation violation in that sense. So that you can think as there are these two possibilities. One is either the system is in some initial state and it has this takes the final state is minus h bar omega different. That means it leaves out an energy packet of h bar omega or energy quanta of h bar omega, or it can the final state can have extra energy h bar omega, then it have an absorbs an energy of h bar omega. Of course, if the first two happen, then the initial state has to be an excited state, it cannot be a ground state, and in the later to happen, the initial state can be of course a ground state. So one is a simulated emulsion, another is a stimulated absorption or an absorption, and these are the some of the key principles behind many practical applications such as lasers. So this the picture, the physical picture is you apply a time dependent potential itself, and the quantum system is some unperturbed part plus a time dependent potential, and the system draws the energy or it gives the energy to the potential. So you can visualize this problem as the time dependent perturbation problem as a problem which has a inexhaustible source or sink of energy through this time varying potential. So now we will work out the Fermi-Golden rule formula from just like earlier, the rate transfer equation, and that is very easy to work out from here. So I am not just showing this just one step, not showing the intermediate step. As we know that it's the same formula except the difference that EF is not almost equal to EI, but EF is almost equal to EI either plus h bar omega or minus h bar omega, and there is a role reversal between the I and F in the mathematical formalism. So if I write this both of these cases for h plus h bar omega and minus h bar omega, these are these two equations at 39, and this can be combined together by saying it is sum initial to final without tagging which one is what, and this is basically 2 pi by h bar VFI square or VFI dagger square with a delta function. These two things written in the sidebar can be captured in this form as the delta function form, and these two are, of course, because of the Hermitian character, these two are the same thing, these two matrix elements. So this equality of these two equations or these two forms can be written together in an equation like this. So this implies, so this term, this particular term implies the emission rate from I to F, and this term implies the absorption rate from F to I. Physically these two, that's what these two means, and that you can divide, one can be divided by the other density of state. So you can call it the density of state of final states for F, where F is the final state, and in this case the final state is tagged as the I. So basically this is basically the meaning of these two things being equal, these two things being the same, and that is like kind of a detailed balance form. If you don't know what is detailed balance exactly, just ignore that particular terminology, but it is just a physical way of writing this these two equations or this equality. And the take home message here is that the constant, for a constant perturbation we obtain a appreciable transition at long time limit only if I is almost equal to F, which means the probability is that the state will remain where it was. And for harmonic perturbation that will happen, there is a transition possibility, but the state will go to a either absorb or emit energy of h bar omega, where omega is the frequency of the harmonic perturbation. So that is basically the main difference between these two cases. And again note that you can play the same, you can do this whole thing by the slow switching on technique which we learned earlier, the Feynman trick, to deal with the singularities and all that in a more smooth manner. And that is basically now you have this harmonic perturbation with a slow turning on part, and that will change the formulas with this extra I eta, which you can take again the eta going to zero limit, and you get back the same forms which we just worked out. So that is basically the whole point. And there are many examples of this perturbation theory or this form of perturbation theory, for which I suggest you to look up this Griffith, Sakurai, Shankar, Landau and Cohen-Tanozji of these forms. This is, I just gave you the formalism or the dry form of this, or dry in the sense that the mathematical form of this and the generic technique, but there are very interesting applications of these things in context of light matter interaction, basically lasers and all, some kind of a particle in a optical field or some electromagnetic radiation, and of course photoelectric effect is one such thing. And there are many other modern very relevant application like NMR and all that. So that is basically this topic. Now we will switch on to the next topic on the next 5th lecture on the extreme cases of time dependent perturbation theory.